What we're going to talk about here today is how to pick a dog or a puppy and choose a breeder. So if you want a PDF file copy of the topics we're going to discuss, I actually have an outline on it, and I can send it to you if you reach out to me. But before we proceed, the first step of selecting the dog is to be honest with yourself. There is a number of people that they see a dragster or they see a high performance sports car, maybe something with nitrous oxide and uh, super big engine and maybe terrible fuel economy, and they think they want that rough ride, that high acceleration, super high intense, high maintenance, high performance type of animal. And well, you don't really, not everybody really wants something that intense. So be careful about what you wish for. We've had a few dogs returned to us that people have got when they thought they wanted such an animal. And sometimes people think they want a working class animal, but because the average pet is such a low performing animal, when they got a high performance animal, the jump was greater than they expected. So sometimes people just want, a little bit more than average, but they don't necessarily want top apex dragster level of performance. All right. So that's first thing is be honest with yourself about what you're looking for. There's a few people out there that really have super high standards. A lot of people that are just your family man with a family, they don't necessarily want that extreme dog. Now, an extreme dog can still be a family dog. Don't get me wrong, but it's not going to be that one that you have to worry about all day long, being super intense all the time. The next, will your lifestyle be able to accommodate such a dog? Do you want what size do you want? What level of sorry, it's a little distracting with the comments and the screen, but what level of drive do you want? And by that, let's differentiate between some of the drives. Obviously, prey drive is the desire to hunt, chase, catch, and kill, to go out and go get it, pursue something. And a dog with that kind of drive is going to require a bit of responsibility from the owner. You obviously don't want your dog going out and killing the neighbor's cat or jumping on the neighbor's dog or something like that. You want a hog catch dog, and I have people that reach out to me saying they want a hog catch dog, a dog with a lot of prey drive. And then the next question they said is, will it be a good livestock guardian? You're trying to put a round peg in a square hole or a square peg in a round hole when you do that kind of stuff. If you're going to have a high prey drive, I don't really recommend that animal for protecting your livestock or your chickens and rabbits and things like that. You're kind of asking for a problem. Next, what about defense drive? Defense drive is the suspicion to strangers. So if you want a dog that's going to be very social, you might not want a high level of defense drive. It's just something to be prepared for. If you want a good protection dog, you can have a little bit of defense or some defense, but you don't have to have defense so much over the top where you're going to end up with a nervous or suspicious animal that's going to be wanting to take a person's head off. Because this YouTube is a little distracting, I'm going to go back to my StreamYard view, and I'll come in and check in the comments in a minute. All right, next, what about agility? I like a super agile animal. One of the reasons why I got into breeding to begin with was back when I was in college. I did a lot of hiking and camping and kayaking and things like that. And when I was out hiking or climbing, I noticed that a lot of times the dogs were wanting to look for the shade tree, to get in the creek and cool off. And it was a little frustrating for me to have to wait for those animals. So ask yourself, what level of activity? Are you wanting a dog that can go jogging with you and be very active with your family? Or are you wanting a dog to kind of chill out? We're going to get to how to identify these traits later on. So please hang in there. And if you like this video, give us a thumbs up and subscribe. I did notice about 70% of our viewers are not subscribed. So if you would subscribe, I'd certainly help. Appreciate it. I'd certainly appreciate it. I'm new to this. I'm going to get better at this. I've always done videos that were pre-recorded in the past. So this live thing is something new. And we're going to get into pedigree analysis and behavioral analysis in a little bit. All right. So how to view these things. So I want, what level of agility do you want? What level of athleticism or endurance and energy activity do you want? All right, next, is heat tolerance important for you? Are you living in Canada or Alaska where it's cold? Or are you living in a climate like I am in Mississippi where it's hot and humid? All right, so working a dog in a hot and humid area, you better be aware of the animal's heat tolerance. Okay, next, Stamina, we've already spoken about that briefly, and energy level, spoke about that briefly. And identify the pros and cons of the different drives. With prey drive, you get more trainability, but you also get more desire to hunt and chase and catch and kill. So there's a good and a bad there, and the same thing with defense drive. You have a pro and a con. So you need to analyze the pros and the cons that come with every behavior. Defense drive has a pro and that it tends to be more suspicious of strangers, more likely to default to protection, but also less likely to stay engaged in a hard fight because a defensive animal is sometimes working out of nervousness, insecurity, or fear. So these are things to consider. They're also more likely to bite somebody that's innocent if somebody was to spill coffee on their lap and jump up and holler. A defensive dog may be insecure. What about rank drive? The pros and cons of rank drive. Rank is the desire to dominate, and a rank-driven dog is a lot of times very easy to start in protection work, but they're also more opportunistic to challenge or threaten the people that live in that group. So that's something that's a con. So you have to weigh the pros and the cons of that. So I recommend that you ID and understand these different behaviors and traits. Another thing is pack instinct, which is the desire to be with the pack. How much do you want that desire to be with you? Some people think that they want a really high desire for a pack instinct, but then if you get too high of a pack instinct, like is seen in some of the Neapolitan Mastiffs, next thing you know, when you leave home, they tear up your house trying to get out because they have separation anxiety. So these are pros and cons that you need to weigh. How much of a particular trait do you want? What are the pros and what are the cons? And if you don't understand this, seek a professional trainer to give you advice perhaps even before you acquire a dog, or maybe go and observe some different dogs work and find out the pros and cons of each of these behaviors before you even get a dog. I'll tell you about my program. I don't like to peddle or sell. I don't want to sell and promote my dogs. Instead, I just show you what I have. Okay. And it's up to you to figure out what you like and what you don't like and whether this is the right thing for you. And if it's not the right thing for you, then I don't want you to get a dog from us, because it's not that I wouldn't want your business or financial support. I certainly would. And I would appreciate that. Right. But the reason why is because I want our dogs to be a good match for the homes that they're in. And so the best thing I can do is present what I produce out there to our viewers, and they need to honestly assess themselves and see what it is that they like. If not, would you be better off with, and ultimately happier with something else? So after you've identified the traits and you figured out what you thought you want, and you learn about it, then reassess, what do you really want? Go back and reflect on yourself again to figure out what you really want, because it may be what you originally thought you wanted, but now that you've learned what these things, the pros and cons of each of these behaviors, you might reassess and change your mind. So reevaluate that after you learn all these things to figure out what it is that you really want, and is it going to fit in your home? Is it going to fit in your lifestyle? Okay. Are you able to provide the energy and activity that this dog may require? Are you going to be able to handle the demands that this dog plays on you and your family? Okay, next, finding the right breeder. All right, for finding the right breeder, I've got six criteria that I suggest that you look at. The first thing is, are they known for quality? Yes or no? Okay, that's going to be the very first thing that you look at. There are certain breeders out there, like let's go back to Bert Sorrells. He's passed away, RIP, rest in peace. But Bert Sorrells was known for very high quality, but he was also known for possibly being a little bit deceptive. So somebody needs to ask themselves, am I willing to put up with some of his deceptive behavior in order to obtain one of his dogs that are well known for being a high quality dog? He was known for falsifying pedigrees. So you might not get the pedigree for how that dog was actually bred if you bought a dog from him. But odds are it was going to be bred very similar to how it was papered, but he didn't always show the actual true pedigree. And sometimes it was because he didn't want to give another breeder credit. For example, he bred to Baker Davis's dog Boomerang supposedly a few times more than it actually shows in the pedigrees. However, that's an excellent dog, one of the best dogs to ever look through a collar. So if that's in the pedigree and it's not shown and you're seeing a different name, odds are the real pedigree was probably better than what you actually saw, because it may have had some key dogs in there that he was using that he didn't want his competition to necessarily know about. All right, so you have to ask yourself, is this breeder known for quality? Now, personally, I think the pedigree should always be accurate, but when you're dealing with people in history, they didn't always do that. Now, next, so are they known for quality? After they're known for quality, do they consistently produce excellent, or were their successes rare? Sometimes you'll see the one-hit wonder, the guy that had the great one dog in his lifetime, or maybe even a second dog, but he didn't consistently, or she didn't consistently produce excellence. So it was kind of an anomaly. If that was the case, then is this really somebody that you want to work with? I would recommend finding a breeder that consistently produces excellence and they have a track record that can show that. All right. You don't want a person that talks about great dogs or claiming to produce great dogs. You want a person that can show you that my teachers are people that can do or explain what I cannot do or explain. I recommend that you find breeders that can produce and show you and explain why their dogs are what they are. If they cannot show you what their dogs are, don't believe them. There's a lot of people out there that claim to have protection dogs, but then the next sentence they'll say, well, I can't show it to you because my lawyer says it's not wise for me to provide proof that our dog will protect, because if I provide proof that our dog will protect and later on it bites somebody, even in a defensive situation, I could get sued and that could be held against me. Well, then they can't prove it. Okay, if they refuse to prove it, don't believe them. If you really believe a lawyer is going to tell somebody not to show it, then they better not even claim it, because if they claim protection, that's just as guilty. All right. So if you're going to claim it, you need to show it. If you're not going to show it, then you don't need to claim it, because you're already admitting guilt when you claim that you have a protection dog. So be careful about who you trust on things like that. Next, I need to be putting markers. Are successes rare or are they consistent? Next, are they honest or a dishonest person? Now, that is both pedigree, but it's also business. A good business will stand behind their product, and if things don't work out, they'll offer a replacement guarantee or a health guarantee, things like this. If a person is dishonest, they're going to try to get your money and run, or they're going to try to send you a dog that's a piece of crap, even though you paid for a premium animal. Let them describe what it is that they're selling to a T and see if they offer transparency. Okay, so you're looking for honesty. You're looking for a person that has a reputation of not only producing excellence, but also providing good customer service. If you can't verify that, then be skeptical. Now, there's a difference between a skeptic and a cynic. Some people will make claims about an individual that may or may not be true. So look for customers of that breeder that have actually done business with them and not just hearsay. Look for authentic reviews on that breeder. Next, ask the breeder, what traits do they prioritize? Okay. If you're looking for like for example, it was very common 20 years ago that people would say, what's more important to you, drive or nerve? And some people would say drive and some people would say nerves. And you need to ask the breeder what it is that they prefer and why it is that they prefer that. And then, not that one's not important, both are important, but if you have two options on the table, let's say dog A is a 10 on drive and a 9 on nerves, and the dog B is a 10 on nerves and a 9 on drive. Which one are you going to choose if you can only keep one, and why? All right, so this will tell you a little bit about that breeder's selection criteria, things like that: health, athleticism, whatever the traits are that you're seeking to obtain. Next, are they accessible to you? Obviously, you can't buy a dog from just everybody. Some people cannot afford what a particular breeder may be charging. Maybe that breeder is not in your area and you're not able to transport the dog to that region. For example, we had a person in Australia that wanted to get one of our American Pit Bull Terriers. Well, American Pit Bull Terriers are illegal in Australia. They're banned in Australia. There are ways around that if I'm going to be dishonest, but I have to get veterinarian paperwork for that, and I'm not going to ask my vet to lie. So my dogs are not available to people in Australia. That's just the way it is. And you might think, well, what about semen? Same thing. I'm not going to send a semen off of an American Pit Bull Terrier to Australia. It's just not available. So you have to work with the breeders that are in your area or that you have access to. And sometimes you may need to do some research to find out what's available in that area. or price or region? Or is the breeder even cooperative? Maybe they just don't like you and they refuse to sell a dog to you. Or maybe you don't like them and you refuse to buy a dog from them. So that means they're not accessible. Next, what are the terms or conditions and guarantees that are associated with that breeder? If you get a dog from them and there ends up being a problem, are you going to have to return that dog to that breeder? If so, and you do return that dog to the breeder, are they going to offer you a replacement? If they are going to offer you a replacement, are you going to be responsible for shipping and handling? These are things that typically occur, and some people offer no guarantee at all because a lot of times what a dog turns out to be is not only up to the breeder, sometimes it's up to the owner as well. So what's covered under any type of guarantee? These are things to look for. Next, pedigree analysis, and this is where most of my viewers are going to be interested in really beginning. We're going to look at pedigree analysis, and we're going to also look at puppy analysis or dog analysis. Okay, and so this is the topic that's going to be more applicable to most of you. So when I'm looking at a pedigree, let's go ahead and do a screen share now, and I'll show you a pedigree here. So screen share screen. Let's go to a pedigree of Boomer and Miss Bandit. We'll zoom in right here. All right, so these are the two dogs that we're going to look at right here. This is Boomer, and this is Miss Bandit. Okay. Now that we see them, we're going to look at these two, and we're just going to look at the first part of the pedigree analysis. We're not going to look in detail yet. We're just looking at the possibility that this pup out of these two is going to be a decent breeder. Okay, or excuse me, not a breeder, a decent worker. We're not going to worry about this dog being a producer yet. We're just going to see if the likelihood that a pup out of these two would be a decent worker. And this is all we need to see to make that general analysis. We don't need to look at, we don't need to look at the great grandparents in the third generation. And we don't need to look at the great great grandparents in the fourth generation. Right now, we just need to look at the first and the second generation. Let me take a sip of my water. And we're going to see if you guys are able to follow that. All right, is that better? All right, good. Yes, we can see it. Perfect. So now that we are looking at this pedigree, we have Boomer and we have Miss Bandit. Now, if we look here, I'm going to be concerned about this dog and this dog the most. What traits is the father bringing and what traits are the mother bringing? Because you're not going to get anything from these four dogs unless it came through these two dogs. Now, there may be hidden traits from these four if they're recessive, and a dominant trait in the parents, the father or the mother, has blocked that trait. Like, let's say this dog, Frankie Bomp, has a particular trait that you're seeking, and let's say Rosebud does not have it. Well, if Rosebud's trait blocks Frankie Bomp's trait, let's say Frankie Bomp has a recessive gene, and that Rosebud has a dominant gene, well, Rosebud might block or suppress whatever it is that I'm seeking from Frankie in Boomer. For example, I'll tell you right now, Frankie Bomp was an extremely muscular dog. Let's look at him real quick. Well, that's a picture of him before he was in shape. I've got other pictures of him where he's really muscular. But because I'm new at this, that was a decent picture. But I've got some pictures of him ripped. Let's see if I can find that picture. Well, we'll worry about that later. All right, so we've got some pictures of Frankie Bomp where he's really ripped and really muscular. Boomer is not as muscular as Frankie Bomp. Let's just say I wanted that muscle tone. Well, if Rosebud has a dominant gene that blocks that muscle tone, although muscle is probably going to be polygenic, it's not going to be this simplified, but I'm just simplifying it here for the purpose of video, then Boomer may not look as muscular as Frankie Bomp. Although Boomer, he's a decent muscular dog. He's not a slouch by any means, but he's not popping in the muscle category, all right? So could Boomer produce the muscle that Frankie Bomp has? Well, if he's not expressing it, he may carry it, but he's not expressing it, okay? But Miss Bandit's also off of Frankie Bomp. So let's say we have a recessive gene from Frankie Bomp, and it's coming into Boomer, and it's also coming into Bandit. When we breed these two dogs together, we might get that muscle tone that Frankie Bomp had if those two recessives line up and pair with each other. Now, that said, like I said, muscle tone's going to probably be polygenic. And Boomer's no slouch. He really is an awesome dog. And I like Boomer. I'm not selling him for anything, right? So he's showing me so many other traits that I like. And if you're interested in knowing more about this dog, we can talk about that if you reach out to me, but that's not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video here is pedigree analysis. What am I going to look at? I'm going to look at the traits of Boomer, and I'm going to look at the traits of Miss Bandit. And then after I look at these two dogs, which are both 50% responsible for the offspring, now I'm going to look at the grandparents. And you'll see Frankie Bomp's in here twice. So I do want to take a look at Frankie Bomp and see what he's bringing to the table. And he's certainly in decent shape here, but that's not his peak condition. All right, so we're back on the pedigree here. And this is Frankie Bomp. He's a 3/4 sorrels dog. Since he is twice in the grandparent, he's the grandfather on that pedigree that we were looking at between Boomer and Miss Bandit, then I would really want to know more about this dog. What are his strengths and his weaknesses? He's a 3/4 sorrels dog. And if you look at his bottom side, you can see that he's pure sorrels, and his top side is only about half sorrels. But we're not going to worry about it too much just yet. Let's go back, because this was just what I call a first glance. I would notice Boomer, Miss Bandit, and Frankie Bomp. Now, Rosebud and Sadie, I might not really worry about a whole lot, but I'm going to still look at them briefly, find out what I can, because these two are 25. So this is 50%, this is 50%, and then we have 25% here and another 25% on Frankie Bomp, so that's also 50%. So I'd want to look at him. And then the last two important components would be Rosebud and Sadie. Those would be 25% each, because this whole column is 100% of the pups, and this whole column is 100% of the pups. So this would be 50 and 50, and then here we have 50 and then 25 and 25. So I'd want to look at that, but we're not going to worry about the great grandparents and the great great grandparents, not yet. In the general analysis of the pedigree that we just did, I'm only going to look at the first two generations to start off with, what we can see right here. And in those first two generations, I'm going to look at what are the traits of the parents and what are the traits of the grandparents. Then I'm also going to get a general idea of, was this breeding an outcross or a line breeding or an inbreeding, by looking at the top and the bottom of the parents. And here we'll see that we basically do have a line breeding, because we have a commonality with Frankie Bomp. And then we also have some commonalities here with Sadie and Rosebud if you go back far, and also with Frankie Bomp and Rosebud if you go back further. All right, so this is a line breeding on some sorrels. That's all I'm going to look at right now, and then try to generalize some of the basic traits, but I'm not going to worry about the 3rd+ generation unless there's a lot of tight line breeding and tight inbreeding. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to look at the dog that we are interested in. All right, and the way we're going to do that, I've got a little video that we're going to look at here briefly. We're going to look at a little video of Valkyrie when she was young. So if I maximize this video, some of y'all are probably using your phone, so I don't want to truly maximize it, because then it may, if you turn your phone sideways, you'll probably get a better view. This is just a short clip of things that I would check on. So let me turn the volume down. So what I'm doing here is I'm just looking at the dog's grip. Okay, this is just a pup, and I'm going to look at and see if she'll counter when it goes static. And there she countered again. After she countered, I picked her up, maybe put some contact over her eyes and over her body. All right, I may pick her up a little bit, see if she holds, see if she adjusts her grip, raise my hand like I'm going to put pressure on her, see if she stays in hold. Does she counter? Stop for a second, let her get a good grip. That was the reward. Now we're going to shoot some 22 blank. All right, and what we're checking here is her nerves. So you can see that she is not spooked or timid by that. Okay, if we can see, I'm going to check her on. It's loud between these buildings. Here we're going to check her on different footing to see how she responds to the different ground. All right, roll her over a bale of wire. All right, so those are some of the things that I'm going to look at there. And let me stop the screen share because that's enough of an example. But as we continue looking at the pup, things that I'm going to look at are the dog's prey drive and defense drive. I'm going to try to get an understanding of this dog, if it has a high prey or if it's got a high defense. And with puppies, I really don't want to see a high level of defense in puppies because that's likely to be an insecure animal when it's grown. But when it's a puppy, we should see a lot of prey and some social interaction. It should be comfortable in new environments and glad to meet people. Maybe a little bit. I don't even really want to see them standoffish of strangers, but I can understand if somebody was walking around at night and it was dark. Maybe the dog would alert to that and whatnot. But in an adult dog, it's fine to see some defense. All right, next, how determined are they on the grip? Will they stay in hold when there's stress? When you're bringing your hand over them, putting your hand over their eyes, are they stressed out about you covering their eyes? Or is it stressed out when you grab the dog and maybe put a little pinch on the dog's back or something like that? Nothing that's abusive, nothing that's harmful, just to see if they're super aware. And maybe the first time you do that or the second time they do that, they're kind of popping off to see what's going on. Hey, what's that? Is that you? Are you mad at me? That's not going to bother me. What I'm going to look for is a dog that's scared by those things. Okay. Inquisitive is fine. Fear is not. Okay, so I'm looking for determination and the commitment to work. Next, is that dog confident? What are its drives like? What is its mental stability? A lot of people don't really understand what stability means. Stability means predictability. This is, again, one of the problems with a dog that's very defensive. A dog that's defensive is oftentimes unstable. Not all the time. There are some stable dogs that have strong defense drive, but it is something to be aware of, that a dog that's very defensive is sometimes unstable. And if you have a dog that's nervous and you're going to take that dog into a performance event, then that dog might not work for you at all. The nervousness may shut down its working instincts completely, and now you left there looking like a fool because your dog didn't perform. So get that dog used to those things, and it's better off if the dog is naturally comfortable with new things. The first time it encounters something, how it responds is actually kind of important, but what's even more important is how fast do they get accustomed to it if they were a little bit distressed. Because, while it's great when a dog has no concerns in any environment, sometimes a dog might be a little concerned in an environment, but if it takes a long time for it to recover and acclimate to that, that's going to be a harder dog to train. So I want a dog that acclimates to new environments very quickly, especially if it's a young dog and you're in those imprinting phases and you have time to work. Another thing that I look for, and I have refused to keep dogs that were very committed because they lacked agility. I want a dog that's quick and athletic. If the dog is not quick and athletic, I really am not too concerned with how good the dog is looking in other areas, because a dog that's not quick or athletic is, generally speaking, not going to be able to perform at my level, no matter how good and determined it may be. You're not going to be able to catch a pig if you can't run down the ravine and up the ravine, or jump over the water that's 18 inches deep and catch up with a pig. You're going to have to be reasonably athletic. Another thing that I'm looking for is the grip. And when I look at the grip, what I'm looking for is that deep, steady grip. And the only time I really want to see a dog counter or re-grip is if that grip that it currently has is not deep and full. If that grip is deep and full all the way to the back of the mouth, I can't really, it's hard to show you. Let's say, all right, so here's the mouth. If that grip is deep and full all the way to the tonsils in that dog's mouth, then I don't want to see a bunch of mouthiness. If it was just a frontal bite with just the canines or the incisors, then I'm cool with the dog re-gripping to get a better grip. But if it's already got a big grip, I don't want to see that dog typewriting up and down the hold on the sleeve or the hog. Okay, I want a steady grip, because every time you open the grip, there's a chance that if that hog moves, or the bad guy jumps, or the sleeve is turned, that it could actually end up with a worse grip. And you don't want to go from a good grip to a bad grip. So I want to see a steady grip that's full and not frontal. I don't want to see a lot of re-gripping. I want to see steadiness on the bite. Okay. And also, is the grip hard or is it soft? A dog can hold a grip without biting hard if It's just trying to hold. The canines can kind of hook on and you can pick it up. And if it's not opening up the mouth, the canines are little hooks and there's just not space between the canines. So it's going to stay and hold. But if the grip is weak, then it's slowly over time going to work, open its way up. It's going to be insecure. It's not generally committed to the bite. So I want to see that hard bite that is committed to ending that prey, that rabbit or that possum or that raccoon or that hog or the bad guy. Okay, so I'm just looking for a hard, deep, steady grip that's not regripping a lot. Next, I'm looking at the conformation both in a static position and in an active position or active movement. If the dog has looseness in its joints, if the legs are really cowhocked, some cowhock doesn't bother me because, Reptar is 10 years old. He's extremely athletic and he's cowhocked. It's not something that I certainly like. I don't like a dog that's got cowhock traits. So I don't breed Reptar to dogs that are very cowhocked. However, does it affect his performance? Not necessarily. I mean, he's still extremely athletic and he's 10 years old and he's perfectly sound, but it's not something that I want to breed him to and make that problem worse. So these are things that you need to consider. I want, good angulation, good conformation. I don't want a lot of flues hanging down really low on the lips that are going to get in the way of the teeth. I want good teeth alignment, good structure. I don't want looseness of joints. I don't want to sway back. I want a tight body that's fit and athletic. All right. I want a scissor bite or an even bite or a reverse scissor bite. I don't want to underbite and I don't want to overbite. Okay. But we're working our way down on the priority list. Something that probably should have been a little bit higher up in the priority that I skipped was the ability to breathe efficiently. Because I'm in Mississippi and heat dissipation is an important factor here, and because the dog's got to work in hot weather, I want to make sure that that dog is able to breathe efficiently. I don't want my dog coming out of hold to catch its breath. So if the dog is not even in hold, if it's just standing in the yard and it's having to open its mouth and breathe and its tongue's hanging out, what's that dog going to do when it's on a hog working? All right, it's going to be out of breath, and if it's out of breath, there goes your determination, because you can't work if you can't breathe. I don't care how tough you are, when you're out of breath and you're really, really out of breath, you're going to have to prioritize breathing over staying in hold, because if you can't breathe, you're finished. All right. You're in big trouble. So being able to breathe is an important criteria. And most people don't look at that. Most people don't pay attention to what is this dog's ability to breathe? This is one of the problems with a lot of the American Bulldogs or some of the Mastiff breeds. They might be able to work for a little while, but can they sustain that work over a period of time? All right. And the ability to breathe and heat tolerance are both going to be a major factor there. I'll tell you where Mastiffs are really good at, though, and that's pain tolerance. They have a very high pain tolerance. Some people might say, oh, dogs are sensitive. They're mentally sensitive, but physically they're tough. They're hard to hurt. They're very tough physical dogs. They may be mentally soft, but physically they're tough. So I look for a dog that's got a pretty good high pain tolerance. We might pinch them a little bit, nothing hard, nothing abusive, but to see if they're sensitive. There's video of of Cobalt out there working on our YouTube channel. He goes up and slams on his back, and it was an accident, but he didn't care one bit. He acted like nothing happened. Okay. I want a dog that's very high pain tolerance, because these become factors that you don't have to worry about. Okay. There's factors that's not going to shut the dog off. Okay. Next, malleability, which means trainability. To have a very trainable dog, there's a couple of things that you need. You need prey drive. You need food drive. I like to use food when I teach a new behavior. The dog doesn't know what I want, and food can be used as a tool for communication. The dog knows how to follow things. I can manipulate it. If I say sit, I'll raise the food up over the dog's head. He looks up. When he looks up, his neck gets uncomfortable, and then his butt goes down, and he gets the reward. So we can use food for teaching of the behavior. But once the dog knows the behavior, I want to transition into a toy, and because now we can make the behavior go faster. Okay, so we're going to use prey drive to get those things going faster. So I want food drive. I want prey drive. I want recovery to correction. If we correct the dog, I want the dog that can recover quick, instead of shutting down and being sad for 10 minutes thinking he's in trouble. All I have to do is say, it's okay, buddy, come on. And the dog is right there ready to go. Reptar's looking at me. All right. So I want a dog that can recover from correction. Take the correction, but recover. I want a high pack instinct, the desire to be with me, but not so high that it's going to rip the doors, the sheetrock off the wall when I leave it, because then you have to get a metal cage and keep that dog confined when you're gone. All these things add up to malleability, the desire to train. They add up to intelligence. I want a dog that looks, you can tell the dog is thinking, it's looking and analyzing, and it's got a good attention to me. Chewy, boy, she just watches me like a hawk. She's like, what do you want? 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 She just repeats herself, asking me to work with her and play with her. I like that. All right, next. Pack instinct has two plays, though. One, it's easy to train, but also we're going to evaluate the dog's pack instinct compared to its independence. You want enough independence that the dog's going to be comfortable in your absence. You want enough independence that if you want to do suspicion work on a tie out and the owner's been separated, the dog is still comfortable and confident. You don't want so much independence, though, where the dog doesn't care about you. It's going to work on its own like a livestock guardian, been bred for hundreds and hundreds of years, maybe even thousands of years, to work without people, just to stay out there with the sheep and watch for the wolves, and it doesn't give a hoot about the people. All right, so I don't want an independent dog that doesn't care about me. Next, I don't want a dog that starts trouble or that is unreasonably dog aggressive. But if something comes his way, I like the Rocky Balboa type of mindset, and by that, Rocky Balboa, fictional character, but he's a nice guy. He's a nice guy. He wants to get along. He's cool. He's polite, but don't start something. Don't start something, because he's going to finish it. And that's what I like in a dog. I don't want a dog that starts trouble, but I do want a dog that if trouble comes its way, it's going to impose its will and it's not going to back down from it. It's like, I'm cool, but don't step on my toes. Don't tread on me. Okay. That's what I look for in a dog. And if you do tread on me, you're going to regret it. Okay. Next. Now, after we've done this in-depth analysis of the prospect, then we're going to now look at the pedigree in much more detail. And so this is different. This last step is not necessary for most people, but if you're interested in being a breeder, now this last step is going to come into play. Again, here I'm going to say, if you like this video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. I'd appreciate a subscription to our channel. Like I said, about 70% of our viewers do not subscribe, but we're now going to enter with giving you some information on how to become a breeder of great dogs. So if you are interested in being a breeder, please like and subscribe to this channel, or maybe even provide some support to this channel through the donations or the super chat. I'm not going to ask for that a lot, but if you're willing to do that, we'd certainly appreciate your support, because it helps us buy equipment so we can do this. I'm trying to upgrade my channel to provide more information to our viewers. All right, so as a breeder, the first thing you're going to ask if you're buying an adult dog is, has the dog been bred? Has this dog been bred before? If the dog has been bred before, that's the number one dictator or determining factor on this dog's ability to produce. And if the dog has been bred before and it does produce excellence, that dog is not going to be cheap. Okay, because excellent breeders are worth a lot. You're now going from a $1,000 to $4,000 pet dog to a minimum of $2,500 dog to possibly over $10,000. I mean, think about this for a minute. If you have a great breeder that produces puppies that sell for $2,000 a piece, and it has 10 puppies in a litter, that might be 20 grand. But at the same time, even though that might be 20 grand in that litter, there are costs that are associated with that. Still have the investment of going out and finding those apex individuals, going out and getting the kennel equipment, going out and getting the training equipment, and then breeding that dog, proving it. Now you've got a great producer, and you're going to turn around and sell it. So those dogs are not going to be cheap. So you're stepping up to a much more expensive animal to buy a good breeder. It may be better off for you to pay a stud fee. Okay. So if it has been bred before, how well did it produce? And also, equally as important, if not more important, how consistent was it at producing excellence? So you may have one or two anomalies that were great, but was it a consistent producer? Next, and this is going to impact its consistency, and that is the dog an outcross, is it line bred, or is it inbred? Because if this dog is a really good working dog and it's inbred or line bred, that's going to increase your chances of being a consistent producer. But don't eliminate the don't believe for a minute that an outcross dog can't be a great producer. An outcross dog certainly can be a great producer. All right, let's look at Bolio. Look at Mayday. A lot of these dogs were multiple way crosses and they produced excellence. So just because a dog is line bred or inbred, well, let me rephrase. Just because a dog is outcrossed doesn't mean it can't be a great producer. It still can be a great producer, but you're going to want to look at the previous productions if it's been bred before. Next, identify the traits that are commonly shared by multiple dogs in that line or in that pedigree. Okay, so let me go back to a pedigree analysis. I'm going to share screen again. We're just going to look at the same pedigree as we looked at before. So this is the pedigree for Boomer and Miss Bandit, Boomer and Miss Bandit. And we'll see that one of the things that they both have in common is they are both very athletic and they are both very prey-driven dogs. Okay, both of these dogs, I'm sure, would catch hogs very well. Okay, they just show a lot of prey drive. They also have good nerves. They're also very strong. He's a solid dog, even though he's not as muscular as Frankie Bomp. He's really strong, and she is really, really strong. Frankie Bomp does seem to throw some really strong dogs. In fact, if we look at one of his daughters, another one of his daughters, you'll see this female. Let's see if I can find her here. Banshee. This dog is just ripped, and she is super solid. I'm assuming that y'all can see her okay. Okay. Very strong dog. So Frankie Bomp has a tendency of producing some really strong. Oh, you may think I showed you the female. If you actually look, she is sired by Frankie Bomp. We did a father-daughter breeding with her. That's why I went to the dam side, because that was a father-daughter breeding to make these dogs over here. All right, next. So you want to look at the traits of them, but then you're also going to look further back to see what commonalities or what traits are in the ancestors. So if we slide over, does the Frankie Bomp dog show the same traits as these dogs? Well, he shows Miss Bandit shows the same traits as him. Boomer shows a lot of the same traits. He shows that finish mindset, that high prey drive mindset, that good bond with the family mindset that Frankie Bomp has. She shows all those same things, plus she has that muscle mass that he has. Let's see if I've got a proper picture of her. That's a little bit older picture. Then Sadie, what about her? This is a very tough female with a high prey drive. Another great dog. Now let's go to the generation before. Well, Rosebud is a pure sorrels dog. And if we go back here and we look on these dogs, you'll see Sidekick is in here multiple times. We've got also, let me show you something else here. So Boomer is off of Frankie Bomp. Bandit's off of Frankie Bomp, but we're not done. Look at Frankie Bomp's sire is Big Daddy. Frankie Bomp, Big Daddy. Now Sadie's off of Slippin' Jimmy, which is Frankie Bomp's half brother, because Slippin' Jimmy is off of Big Daddy. So now that I'm looking at the pedigree more in depth to see if this breeding will produce a pup that's capable of producing, I need to know more about Frankie Bomp, Slippin' Jimmy, and Big Daddy. What were the traits that were known about these particular dogs? And look at that dog's muscle mass. Big Daddy was a very muscular dog, and Frankie Bomp was the same way. All right, and Sadie was a well-built dog. So now we're starting to see some of those things. Then we also see we've got Cupcake in here multiple times. Cupcake. Misfit is a daughter of Cupcake. So there's Cupcake. Let's see. So let's look. We're going to look at Cupcake here real quick. Cupcake, it says here, I don't know if this is, if you copy that and you go to that, you'll see that Cupcake was a great producer. All right. I don't know if I can, I'll tell you what, we'll make it work. Give me just a minute. Boom. Let's see. All right, Cupcake is listed as the third time, or she's tied for third, but really there's two dogs also tied for second. So you got first producer, second producer, third producer, and then you got Cupcake. Cupcake is tied is for third producing uh, one of the top dogs in history. Now I don't know if that's showing. Yeah, good. It looks like it's still showing for y'all. All right. So now we can see that there's a increased likelihood that this breeding is going to produce. We got a lot of Big Daddy. We've got a lot of Cupcake. What about Sidekick? That Sidekick dog's in here a lot too. So you can look at him and you can learn about these traits. Instead of me defining all these traits, what I'm showing you is how I would look at the pedigree on these dogs. I want to find the traits of these two. I want to find the traits on Frankie Bomp. I want to find the traits on his half brother. And then I want to find the traits of the parent that they share, Big Daddy. Then I'm going to see that Cupcake's in here multiple times. And I'm going to see that Sidekick's in here multiple times. And I'm going to want to know the traits about all these common things. Next, I'm going to, let me undo my screen share. After I do that, so I've identified as the dog an outcross, line bred, or inbred. Next, I'm going to identify the traits that are commonly shared between the dogs and the lines that are seen in that pedigree. Next, were these traits purposefully selected for, or were they a coincidence? And the reason why I say that is there's a lot of people that really don't study canine genetics very well. And even a broken clock is right twice a day. So you want to see if it's consistently seen in a pedigree. This is where you're going to need to go back and look at the breeder or the bloodline and see if are these great traits showing up time and time again, or were they anomalies. Now, this is going to be an important factor for two reasons. If they are selected for, then you're going to drive up the allelic frequency for those traits, which means you're going to increase your chances of producing those traits. If it was coincidental, perhaps those genes were just dominant, but they weren't selected for. And if you get the wrong individual, you might not have those traits in your dog. You could end up with traits that are not going to be expressing what it is that you're looking for. So you need to find out if these traits are consistently seen throughout the pedigree. Next, are these traits definitive, or meaning seen in there a lot, or are they inconsistent? So was it selected for, or was it coincidental? And also, was it prevalent a lot, or was it rare? This is the allelic frequency. The more often you see the desired traits in the pedigree, the more often that it is going to be a great producer, because you have a higher allelic frequency. Now, if you don't know what allelic frequency is, the word allele means the gene that is responsible for producing the desired trait. So you're going to look for generation after generation after generation to see if these genes are consistently flowing through a working program, or were they just a coincidence. All right, next. Did these traits show up in every generation, or did they skip generations? You might think that that's the same question, but it's actually not. Something could be consistently skipping. All right, that may be a recessive trait, or it could be consistently present in every generation, which could be a dominant trait. A lot of people in the dog world seem to think that dominant means revealed a lot, but that's not what it means. Revealed a lot means high allelic frequency, but a dominant trait, if it's present, it will be shown, and if it's not present, it will not be shown. But a recessive trait will always be shown when it's homozygous. It's always going to, a dominant trait is not present, so the recessive trait is going to show. And so if you bred a recessive to recessive, all of the offspring will show that gene. And because there's no dominant present. So think of a dominant as a mask. So my phone is going to mask my face. It's covering it up. It's covering up my face. That is a dominant trait if it's present. If it's not present, the dominant gene is gone. If it is present, you see it. So the recessive trait is what's not masked. So if you breed a recessive with a recessive, it means there's no mask even present. And so, like, let's say you bred a blue dog to a blue dog, all the offspring are going to be blue because there's no black dominant gene to suppress it. Blue is only shown on a black diluted dog. So blue is actually a dilute alternate of black. Okay. But anyway, let's move on, because we're not going to worry about blue dogs here. That's not the purpose of this video. So you're going to look for consistency and then also see if it skips or if it doesn't skip. If it skips, it might be recessive with a dominant gene present. We'll have a separate series of videos on specifically on dominance and recessive and allelic frequency on monogenic Mendelian traits. All right, next, if there is a recent outcross, why was that outcross there? Was there a reason for that breeder doing an outcross? Was there something missing? So let's say a person wanted to add strength to the bite. Was the old bite weak? Maybe they did an outcross because litter size was small, and they wanted to get a hybrid, increase the hybrid vigor in the offspring. So they may have done an outcross for that reason. So if there is an outcross, find out why there was an outcross. Was there something missing in the line? Was there something missing previous that they wanted to bring in or enhance from that breed? Or was it just kind of like, okay, maybe they did it because I'll tell you, let me give you a true story. So we bred Wrecker to a bitch named Mystique. Mystique was a great producer. I got great dogs off of her. I bred her to Wrecker. We got Patches and we got Four Socks. I bred Patches 4 times and she had 1 litter. We bred her sister Four Socks 4 times, never had a pup. So what was going on there? Those dogs had what's called inbreeding depression. So their reproductive success was declined because Mystique was already heavily related to Wrecker, and Wrecker was the most inbred dog I ever had. So even though Patches and Four Socks were super strong, very powerful dogs, their ability to reproduce was diminished. So what we had to do was we had to take the 1 litter that we had off of Patches and we outcrossed it, because even though those dogs were great, their reproductive success was declined because of the excessive inbreeding. Their traits were fine except for their inbreeding depression on litter size. So we went and took Patches to an outcross, and that was the reason for that breeding. So ask that breeder why you did an outcross. What was the objective of that outcross? Okay, and that will impact whether or not that dog is going to be a consistent producer or not. It won't determine if it is, but it will impact the consistency. Okay, so let's say, for example, that my bitch Trinity, who's out of Lucky 7 and Patches, she's a product of that outcross. So because of that, Trinity may not be a consistent producer in type, but she could still be a consistent producer in quality. So type and quality are different things. Maybe some of them will be big, maybe some will be small, maybe some will work, maybe some of them will be total junk and won't work at all. Now, we've only bred Trinity a couple of times, and so far I like what I see, but I would not expect her to be as a consistent producer in type as a more tightly bred dog. They might still be quality, but it won't necessarily be as consistent because it's an outcross. You have genes there that are different. Okay, that's called heterozygous, when a homozygosity versus heterozygosity. Homozygosity is when a lot of the alleles are the same from inbreeding and line breeding, usually, but it can be high homozygosity from selective breeding if you're specifically selecting for desired traits, and now you have a lot of the traits are very much the same. Next, if there was an outcross seen, does that outcross share ancestral roots with the primary line? So let's say, for example, that Bert Sorrells bred to a Patrick dog. Well, Patrick's dogs go back to the same original origin as Bert Sorrells' dogs. And then maybe he got a family of those, and then they took those dogs that were selected after multiple generations of breeding, and Bert Sorrells refined back for his traits, and then he outcrosses again to maybe Greenwood. But Ralph Greenwood had also had dogs that went back to the same ancestral roots of the Sorrells dogs. So even though they're outcrosses, they're very loose line breeding, because the ancestors behind those dogs, if you go back 20 years, it was the same original dog. So it's still kind of like line breeding. All right. So sometimes it looks like an outcross, but on further analysis, it may not actually be. You need to look into that if you want to find a consistent producer. Okay. Don't confuse consistency with quality, though, because something can consistently be trash also. All right. So some dogs don't produce very well and they're consistently trash. So consistency and quality are 2 different things. Next, what What is the typical litter size? We discussed that earlier. If the litter size is really small, I would say if you get below 4 pups in a litter, it's probably time for you to do an outcross. If you get down to 2 or 3, you might not be able to recover from that on the next generation. You may end up with a bunch of sterile dogs. So if you got down to like 4 dogs in a litter, I would want to do an outcross. Okay. Next, are there any other weaknesses in the line? And if so, what are those weaknesses? And also, are those weaknesses reoccurring? Now, if you've heard me talk about the use of the Neapolitan Mastiff in the American Sentinel, I said some of those dogs had hip dysplasia. It was not a common thing that we experienced. It was pretty rare. But if I was line bred on Neapolitan Mastiff, I guarantee you that trait would be more prevalent. But I didn't. I selected against hip problems, and I also did not line breed a lot on the Neapolitan. I kind of went more towards the English on that side when we were dealing with the American Sentinel. But this is just an example. You could do this with any dog. If you see a problem in a line, it's only a problem if it's reoccurring. If it's rare, for example, hip dysplasia is generally speaking, look it up if you want to verify this, is generally speaking like 5 to 10% on most breeds, and in some breeds it's as high as 20 or 30%. We are maybe getting like 2%. So we are so far above the norm that it's not a problem. We've made major strides, and hip dysplasia is very rare. It's not that it's obsolete and doesn't happen in the American Sentinels, and we never get it in our pit bulls because I don't use showbred lines. We just use the game bred lines. And although you can get game bred dogs that have hip dysplasia, I've stayed away from those dogs completely. Okay. So if you, for example, in the pit bull, I require the hips to be excellent or good. In the American Sentinel, we allow excellent, good, and fair. I never allow poor. But in the Mastiffs, you're going to have a hard time finding excellent or good. There's a few, and Eclipse was good or excellent, and Caesar was the other. One of them was good, one of them was excellent. I forget which one was which. But regardless of that, those were the English Mastiffs that we used in our Sentinel program. The norm for the English Mastiff is nowhere near as good as it is for the Pit Bull. And the norm for the Neapolitan is nowhere as good as it is for the English Mastiff. So when you start using these breeds that have more problems, you're going to see more problems. So select away from those things and try to avoid lines that have reoccurring problems. If the problem is better than the population, you're making steps in the right direction. All right. But you're always, no matter how good you are, you're going to always try to be better and better. So keep pushing that envelope to a higher level of standard. Next, are dishonest breeders or breeders with low standards seen in the pedigree? Now, when I read that, I was a little confused because I was like, I already talked about breeders. We're not talking about breeders here. We're talking about dogs now. And so you're going to look at a pedigree and see if there's dishonest breeders in the pedigree. Because if there's dishonest breeders in the pedigree, you don't blame the individual dog, but you do have to question, now, is the dog going to be able to produce at the level that you expect it to produce? Because it may not be bred the way you think. And this is why I think pedigrees should be reported accurately. If I'm buying a dog from you for $2,500, in my opinion, if I bought a dog from Bert Sorrells, I'm buying a quality dog, and he may be breeding dogs for a certain thing. But if I'm buying that dog with the intent to breed it, I don't want it to just do that certain thing. I also want the dog to be able to produce. And for it to produce, I need to know if the dog is a line bred dog, an inbred dog, or an outcross dog. So this is where, if you're dealing with suspicious breeders that falsify things on pedigrees, you might be a little bit suspect. Now, yes, it's true that my favorite bloodline is the Sorrells line, but I'll tell you flat out, even though it is my favorite line, I have gone through a lot of dogs, and I've gone through several Mayday dogs that didn't meet the criteria. I've gone through Barracuda dogs, which is similar bred, that didn't meet the criteria, and I've kept a few that did, and I've gone through Sorrells dogs, and most of them did meet the criteria, but we had a few that didn't. And so we've had to wean those out, and slowly over time, after all these years of selective breeding, I've now got on my yard what represents my goal. And so I was telling a friend of mine, Madison Parker, that I now feel like calling the dogs that I have on my line my pit bulls I'm talking about as the Robinson line, because now every single sorrels dog that every pit bull that I have on my yard has sorrels in it. Every single one of them. I have 2 dogs on my yard that have Red Boy Jocko Bolio Tombstone and Cottingham and Crenshaw in it. But all the rest are sorrels, and even those 2 are still heavy sorrels. They're both daughters of Frankie Bomp, and sorrels. Frankie Bomp was 3/4 sorrels. So we have sorrels in all of our dogs now, all of our American Pit Bull Terriers. But that doesn't mean that every sorrels dog gets to earn its place here. We've had some sorrels dogs that we're like, no, we're not using that. We've had some Ralph Greenwood dogs. Nope, we're not using that. We've had some Bolio stuff that was good, and we had some Bolio stuff that was not so good. But now the dogs that I have on my yard represent what I want. And so you need to look at that breeder and ask yourself, is this breeder honest? Does this breeder have a standard that consistently produces performance? And do they do good business? And then also look at the pedigree, not only for the breeder, but also for the dog. Is this dog really going to be bred the way it says on paper? And if not, what kind of problems might I anticipate? If I see genetic variation, then the pedigree may be falsified. If I see consistency, then the pedigree may be accurate. Or just the opposite. What if they did an outcross and they said they did a line breeding? Or what if they did a line breeding and they said they did an outcross? Now we're changing up the consistency, whether it went from good to bad or bad to good. Finally, the last thing I'm going to do when I'm deciding if the dog is the right dog for me, I got to buy it. But I'm not yet done, even though I bought it. I still have to evaluate that dog 3 ways. I'm going to evaluate, does the dog work? And then after it works, I'm going to let it rest. And then it's got to get up. And I want to see if the dog recovers well. A dog that has to, if you work a dog physically for a long, hard time, and after the dog, and I'm talking about an adult dog, a dog that's fully grown, after that dog gets up, I want to make sure that dog doesn't have any limps or any soreness that's unusual. Now, if the dog got hit, let's say a hog slammed him into a tree and it's got a bruise and it's sore, okay, that's different. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about, let's say you run the dog and the dog gets up and it's kind of limping. Well, that's going to tell me there's probably some problems with the joints or the ligaments or the tendons. So I'm looking for a dog that not only can work, but also recovers quickly. A dog that's quick to recover, and not only quick to recover from rest, but also quick to recover on his feet. So if the dog's doing aerobic exercise, which is going to be replaced with oxygen, and the dog's able to continue going and continue going and continue going, and then we hit anaerobics, which is now high burst of power. The dog's going to be oxygen depleted, and then after it's oxygen depleted, does the dog have to sit down and lay down? Or can the dog recover on its feet and go right back into aerobics? Now, the aerobics may be a little bit depleted, but can the dog recover and get back to regular maintained pace of aerobics? Does the dog have to go from a jog to a sprint to a sit down and rest? Or can the dog go from a jog to a sprint to a jog, or maybe a slow jog, but a jog, and then after a jog, go back to a normal jog, and then after a normal jog, go back to a sprint and repeat? All right, so I'm looking for a dog that can recover on its feet. And then after that, because you're not going to be able to do that with somebody else's dog, right? You're going to have to own the dog to do that. And then after that, I'll also look at the hip x-ray. We're going to do a hip evaluation to make sure those hips are sound. All right. And so there you go. That's how I would go about picking a dog. And I hope, like I said earlier, I hope that you like this video. Let's now look at some of the questions. All right. Do your Sentinels make good family guardians? That's what they're bred for primarily. That's the number one objective of the American Sentinel. They also do hog catch work, but they're bred to be a family companion guardian. Do you have a preferred kibble brand? I have found several brands that are pretty good. We have a page on our website. If you go to it, let me show you that. I'll open up my website here and show you that page. All right, so let me go down to StreamYard. I'll show you how to find this on my page, which is going to tell you how we choose our dog food or which dog foods that we use. All right, so we're going to go here and we're going to click on articles, and then we're going to go to canine nutrition. And from canine nutrition, we have an article on the foods that we like. If you want to download it, you can click right here and it'll download the entire article. This article will tell you my thoughts are on various kibbles. We have F grade kibbles, things that we've tried, maybe things that we didn't try. D, C, B, and A. These are the foods that I like or foods that I don't like. I'll tell you right now, the foods that I like the best are going to be the Purina Pro Plan Sport is a good one. Another one that's good is the Pro 89 that you saw in the picture there a minute ago. That's a really good food. The black bag of Value Pack seems to be pretty darn good. It's not going to be a perfect food, but it's pretty darn good. Oh, let me stop screen sharing. So the next you're going to have, there's a lot of good kibbles out there, but none of them are good as raw if you do raw correctly. I have too many dogs to deal with raw, but if you do raw correctly, it is going to be the top choice. Next, Austin, Texas. Looking forward to some Bacote updates. She's such a beautiful dog. Hoping this stream helps me decide between getting a Bandog or an American Pit Bull Terrier. Big fan. Thank you very much. You can do both. All right, not really. You can't do both because if it's crossed, it's a Bandog. It's an American Sentinel. But the reason why I say that jokingly is because we actually bred Bacote to Reptar. All right, we'll see if that takes or not. It's her first breeding that we've done. Next time I'll probably breed her back to Boomer or Jackknife. We'll probably do a pit bull breeding next time with her. She's a great dog. I like her a lot. She's very solid, got good size, good strength, very dense and strong. All right, Frankie Bomp. Somebody said he's almost 10 now. Unfortunately, Frankie Bomp got encephalitis. The vet thinks it was probably from a bug bite of all things, and it caused an infection that got in his brain. So we lost Frankie Bomp. He's no longer with us, but we did get semen collected from him before that happened, thankfully, about a year earlier, and we have enough semen from him to do 10 breedings. Or excuse me, 5 breedings. I said 10 because I was reading almost 10 years old now. But we have enough semen from him for about 5 breedings. Do I plan on breeding Trinity back to Reptar to concentrate on Wrecker blood? No, I do not, because Wrecker was actually tightly bred already, and Trinity being his daughter, she's going to have a lot of well, she's an outcross coming from Lucky 7, so I could get away with it, but I'm probably not going to do that. I thought about it before because it'd be a good way to get some of that size that Wrecker was actually producing, because Reptar is off of Wrecker, but I probably won't do that. There's a chance because she is an outcross. It shouldn't be too tight on this next generation going back to a half sibling, but I don't know. We'll see. Would you potentially produce females similar in size to Four Socks? I don't know. Four Socks was huge. I think on the website it might have said 110 or 100 pounds, but she was bigger than that. She was probably, sometimes I put a weight on a dog on the website when the dog's like a year old, and then when they're 2 or 3, they're 5 or 10 pounds bigger, and I don't always go back and update the website because honestly, size is not my number one criteria. For example, recently went back through some of the pit bulls and we updated some things because some of these female pit bulls that we had listed up for like 42 pounds have ended up closer to 46 pounds because a year later, when they were 2 years old, they were more than they were at 1 year old. All right, next, it's crazy how some litters represent one side of the grandparents over the parents. That's especially going to be, my screen jumped there. That's going to especially be true when you have a homozygous recessive. So maybe the parents were showing recessive, but the grandparents were homozygous, and when you breed a half sibling together, you might get those homozygous coming back out. And so sometimes the offspring don't represent the parents, but they represent the grandparents, because that's a throwback gene. Salute chat. Next, let's see, got a Cane Corso female that has been doing very well. Problem is I'm finding good stuff of working lines. Not these 180-pound snobby mess. Okay. I understand that. Good Cane Corsos do exist, but they're pretty rare, unfortunately. What's the problem with most Cane Corsos and presses? The problem, in my opinion, on the pressa is consistency. You'll see prey drive, you'll see defense, but you very rarely see both, and they're becoming more Mastiff light the more popular they become. It appears as if they've bred Mastiff dogs into the presses and made them bigger and sloppier than they used to be 20 years ago. The Cane Corso, the problem with them is they tend to be fear-based. They have bad hips a lot of times. They're not the most sound. They're not the most stable, and sometimes they're even rank-driven. But the rank drive, May not be a major problem in Corsos, but it's going to happen a little bit. The biggest problem with the Corsos is going to be the nervousness, the flightiness, the defensive nature that's over drawn, overblown, and or excuse me, just too strong for a dog that doesn't have enough prey drive and confidence to follow through. Not all of them. There's some good ones, but they're just not very common. And they're usually bred different than game dogs. They're not usually as tightly bred, so consistency can be a problem. Next, another amazing video full of knowledge. Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. I appreciate that. Next, we have Sunday Man said, love these live streams. I appreciate that. Shane K said, Lee, I got to pop off Lady Smith and Vlad. He's amazing. I do have a question on drives. He doesn't seem to show much prey drive yet. Every time he does see a dog, he goes into kill mode. Is this defense drive? All right, so some people don't believe in fight drive. A lot of trainers will say fight drive doesn't exist. They'll say it's a combination of, it's not really fight drive. They say that's just prey and defense working at the same time. Personally, I disagree. I define prey drive as the desire to hunt, chase, catch, and kill. I define defense as the desire to defend and protect against a threat that's currently present. Fight drive is different. Fight drive is the desire to eliminate whatever the target is, but they don't have any desire to eat it. So prey drive is to hunt, chase, catch, and kill for the purpose of consumption. So why does a wolf kill a rabbit? It kills a rabbit so it can eat the rabbit. Defense drive is not about killing the opposition. It's about eliminating the threat. So if the threat leaves, that's fine. They're not necessarily going to pursue it. They're just going to defend and protect to get the threat to leave. Now, some defensive dogs can be forward, but that's still if the threat is present. So they're kind of pursuing because the threat is still within their eyesight and they're dealing with it right now. And they just kind of have follow through and transition into a bit of prey. Fight drive is kind of different. Fight drive is, imagine somebody harmed a very close, loved child of yours. Someone really harmed them, but that child didn't tell you what happened. They were traumatized. They didn't speak. They're quiet. The threat was over with. You found out about what happened maybe a week later after a psychiatrist spoke to your child. You finally find out and you're pissed. You're really pissed. You might want to hunt and chase and blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to elaborate on that anymore because it sounds like I'm condoning an activity that I'm not condoning. But you go and you're going to pursue and catch and eliminate this individual, but you're not doing it for the purpose of consumption. But also the threat is not present. So it's not defense and it's not prey, it's fight. You're doing it with the same intensity of prey and the intensity of defense, even though there's no threat and there's no desire to eat. This is when emotion comes into play and adrenaline comes into play. And perhaps adrenaline, like fight drive, perhaps that is related to gameness to some degree because adrenaline's kicking into play. All right, so maybe that helps you with that. I would also, one of the problems that some people do when they're trying to work prey drive is they work the dog too long, work the dog, and when the dog reaches a level that's as good as it gets, then let it win for a minute and then put it away. And then this way the dog ends on a positive note, and the next time it comes out, it might do the same thing and then a tiny bit more. And so slowly you progress the prey drive and build that prey drive going from A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Don't go from A to Z. Okay. You gotta learn how to drive 10 miles an hour before you go 100. Okay. So let's make it progressive and you should be able to build that prey drive. Another thing that you can do is work the dog with another dog to get some sort of competitive prey. The dog can, sometimes they'll become competitive just because another dog is there. The guy asked if Logan made the cut. Logan was a great dog, but we have a limited number of spaces. So the bar moved up. And when the bar moved up, he was a very small dog for being an American Sentinel. He was about 75 pounds, maybe 80 pounds. And American Sentinel male should be a little bit larger than him. So even though he had some good traits, I just felt like I needed to focus on a dog that was a little bit bigger and still had good traits, because when you're at 70 pounds, 75 pounds, 75 and 80 pounds, believe it or not, there's pit bulls that are 65 pounds. So you're starting to get close enough to a pure pit there. So that was the problem with Logan. He was a good dog, but he was just not as big as we wanted. We bred him to a female that would produce size to try to rectify that situation and moved on from there. Who has produced more athletic dogs, Frankie Bomp or Lucky 7? Uh, well, they both, in terms of being athletic, they were both pretty good. That was not the problem that I had with either one of them. The athleticism was fine. The biggest thing that I saw, as far in terms of difference between them, it was consistency. Frankie Bomp was a very consistent producer. Lucky Seven would be consistent with some breedings, but he wasn't consistent when he was line bred on, which was kind of strange. But he was a little bit weaker in that line breeding department. And the other thing that he had was he's not as smart. Frankie Bomp was super smart. And then another problem with Lucky Seven was he was not super affectionate. Like he would work, he was all about work, but then, like, let's say you brought him in the house, he might come over to you and he would like it if you pet him. But after you pet him for a minute or two, he was fine to go sit on the couch and kind of just do his own thing. Frankie Bomp really wanted to interact with me. So Frankie Bomp had a higher degree of trainability, and Frankie Bomp was more muscular. Frankie Bomp was a proven dog. Frankie Bomp had just all around was a better personality. And Lucky Seven would like do some stupid things like bite the ground, bite the metal, ruin his teeth, things like that. So Lucky Seven was a great producer with some dogs. He produced really good with Widow. Um, he produced good with Onyx, although some of them were cowhocked. They were still very solid dogs. He produced good with, well, let's see. I got to think about it. Who else did we get? Oh, he produced good with Patches, because I'll tell you, Trinity is good, Maggie is good, Slam is good. So Lucky Seven was a really good dog with some breedings, but he wasn't as consistent as Frankie. Next, how is Ranger doing? Ranger is doing great. He is a dog that is difficult to breed. He's very animal aggressive. He's friendly with people, but he's very animal aggressive. Whether it's male or female, it's or a hog or whatever, he's going to be aggressive to animals. The my boy always got a queuing on the weirdos. Loves people, but whom I'm okay with, and absolutely in prey-driven monster with other animals. Chances he will become more civil aggressive. Well, if he's a prey-driven monster with other animals, use that to transition him to equipment, and then from equipment transition to man. So what I would say is get you two back ties and put the two dogs on the back ties and have them far enough away that they can't reach each other, and then get a rag on a burlap or a rag on a leash or something like that, and work that rag between him and the other dog. Flip it in and flip it out. Flip it in, flip it out. Then eventually, after he sees that other dog work the rag, he'll probably want to work that rag. When he works that rag, get that other dog out of there and get the dog to focus on the equipment. Then after he focuses on the equipment, then you'll do some classical conditioning type stuff where a man agitates, then does equipment. Man agitates, then does equipment. Man agitates, dog's going to key up because he's expecting the equipment. After the dog agitates with the man, then you'll focus and develop that. So it's progressive. Okay. Hope that helps. What's the average life expectancy of your dogs? Well, Reptar's 10. He's still acts like a young dog. I would say the average life expectancy is anywhere between 11 and 14. Ryan is doing Reptar to Trinity, a littermate to Maggie. No, the other way around. Ryan is doing Reptar to Maggie, a littermate to Triggy. But yeah, Jaguar, you know those dogs. I'm sure that was a typo. Next, what happened there? That's interesting. Oh, cool. You click on something, it does that. I learned something there. Next, huh? What did happen there? Oh, I see. Did the video end? I don't know if the video ended or not. I hope I'm still live. Greetings from Iowa. Perspective of a 27-year-old breeding Schnauzer and German Shepherd show lines and other sides of the tracks with a ton of respect for yours, 35 years. Thank you. Do you think Jackknife and Pumpkin is too tight? No, I don't think it's too tight. But right now, I think Pumpkin is an awesome, awesome dog. And I really love the traits that I'm seeing out of Boomer. Boomer is a very determined, relentless dog. He thinks he's King Kong. So when I've got a dog that's as Awesome is Pumpkin. Super jacked, very muscular, pure sorrels dog. Uh, there's conformation wise, Pumpkin is perfect. Her prey drive is good, so I'm breeding her to Boomer, the dog that just thinks he's King Kong, and it's going to be nice to see what happens there. Thanks, Lee, for such a great dog. I couldn't ask for a better dog. Shane K says that. Well, you're welcome, Shane. I'm glad that you're very happy. Do you think you will try and breed Ranger, or is he too aggressive? No, we bred Ranger a few times. We just we we've taught him to breed. It took 3 breeding heat cycles for him to get okay with it. Boy, Reptar's just acting silly, rubbing his eyes with his paws. You probably hear him snorting. He's rolling around on his back like a puppy. Um, we had 3 breedings planned with Ranger before we actually had Ranger successfully breed. He would go in there and he would want to be aggressive with the females, and we put him with Halo one time, who was very tolerant and flirtatious with males, and we finally got him into a breeding mindset. We had him muzzled and taped um, and whatnot, and she finally flirted with him enough to realize there was no need to be aggressive. So Halo was a good dog in terms of her ability to produce, but she was also good because she was cooperative with male dogs. So now Ranger now knows what breeding's about. So the dog aggression, he still acts like he's going to do something with a female, but he usually doesn't actually do anything with the female. So he's kind of learned that breeding is more important than fighting. Your least stubborn dogs. Stubborn is relative. So in terms of interacting with me in the house, none of them are stubborn. They're all good. They're all subordinate to me. They're not rank driven. They respond well to correction. In terms of me trying to pull them away from a hog or something that they're aggressive to, yes, they're very stubborn in that regard. So this is going to just be a matter of obedience training because the dogs are not actually stubborn to us. It's just a matter of conditioning. How do you know if your dog is skittish at 10 months? Is the dog still developing? Well, at 10 months old, the dog is certainly still developing, but if the dog is skittish at 10 months, it's probably going to remain skittish instinctively to a certain degree. You might be able to acclimate that dog and get it better, but its innate genetic predisposition is going to be skittish. And I don't like a dog like that because you go to a performance venue and it's going to oftentimes disappoint. All right. So I don't know if that's it on the questions, but if you look here, let me refresh this page and see how we're doing. All right. So 60 of you have liked this. I appreciate that. That's great. 59 of you are in this group. Hey, why don't y'all 59 go down and like that video? All right. And then I know 60 is more than 59, so that's great. I got more likes than I do viewers. That's awesome. Then we've got a few more comments here. How do you know if your dog is skittish? Oh, okay, that was the same one. Why did you lean towards the Sorrels Bolio rather than the Sorrels Boudreaux? And yes, I know I misspelled that. Hey, I get it. Boudreaux's a tough one to spell. You seem to focus on the Sorrels, or it says Bolio Sorrels now instead of the dogs like Black Betty. Well, Black Betty was actually heavy Sorrels. Go look at her pedigree. Black Betty was a daughter off of Frankie Bomp, bred back to a bitch named Suki. Suki was off of Slippin' Jimmy. Suki was actually Sadie's littermate. So if we look at Black Betty pedigree, let me do a screen share here. And we're going to go to pedigrees, online pedigrees. And we're going to go to Sadie. You can see that she's a daughter of Slippin' Jimmy. We're going to click on siblings, and you're going to see Suki. And we click on Suki's offspring, and we're going to see Black Betty. All right. And Black Betty is a daughter of Frankie Bomp. So this right here is Sorrels. A lot of people think black dogs are Boudreaux, and there is Boudreaux in there if you go back, but she's actually more Sorrels than anything. Okay. She's 5/8 Sorrels because this is 3/4 and this is half. Here we have Suki going back to Slippin' Jimmy, and Slippin' Jimmy goes back to Big Daddy, like we spoke about earlier. All right, and then these dogs go back to the Lara's dogs. And Lara, depending on how you're saying it. If you're trying to say it in English, it's Lara. If you're trying to say it in Spanish, which is where they are, it's like Lada, something like that. I don't know exactly how to say it, but there is some Boudreaux coming in. But that said, I primarily focused on the Sorrels because the Sorrels line has excelled very, very well in many venues, not only traditional game dog venues, but it's done well in treadmill racing. It has done well in wall climb. It's done well in Schutzen. If you go back decades ago, Diane Jessup had one that was titled to Schutzen 3. All right. So that's unusual. They've done well at hog hunting. They've done well at weight pull. They're great family companion dogs, very intelligent. So to me, like the Sorrels dog is like the perfect all-around dog. The reason why I personally didn't go with the Boudreaux dogs, let me open a new window. Now, what I'm about to show you may be a little bit controversial, and I'm not trying to be controversial, but you asked me a question as to why I didn't use a particular animal. So let me do a screen share now on this. Now, I don't want to misspeak. There's no doubt that Floyd Boudreaux and Jerry Clemens produced excellent, excellent dogs. This is not right. All right. So why did I not use the Boudreaux dogs? Let's see. Let me go back to. All right. So Bully Son is one of the most famous Boudreaux dogs there is. And if you prefer Eli, well, Eli is his father. Well, what do I know about these dogs? Well, let's look at this pedigree here for just a minute. And we're going to see this dog Scrub. All right, well, Spook quit, okay, and then Bully Son was also got beat by his son, and then Scrub, which is the foundation dog behind the Boudreaux line, is 4 times on Blind Billy. So Blind Billy was bred to his daughter, was bred to his daughter, was bred to his daughter 4 times in a row, and this dog was a quitter. And if Scrub quit, if Blind Billy quit, and Scrub quit, and Spook quit, then I wasn't interested in the line. And even Bully Son quit. Now, with that said, everybody that I know that knows Bully Son would love to have Bully Son. So I'm not trying to disrespect the line, but you asked me a question, why did I quit? And that's why I quit. Cody Wolf, thank you for the super sticker. I appreciate the financial donation to our channel. I do plan on trying to upgrade myself with this technology as I get better. All right. Next, we got some questions coming in. So that's why I leaned towards the Sorrels. My boy is 70 pounds at 12 months. How big should he get? Well, who are the parents on your dog, Mr. Butler? If you let me know, then maybe I can tell you that. If it's related to our yard, maybe I can tell you that. If it's related to something else, I might not be able to tell you. But generally speaking, around a year old, the dog's going to be 90 to 95% of its adult weight, unless you're dealing with a Mastiff type breed. Next, what would you say was the most civil aggressive dog on your yard? There's not one. I can name a bunch of them that are civilly aggressive. Scratch is civil aggressive. Bumper civil aggressive. Onyx is civil aggressive. Ladysmith is civil aggressive. Eastwood was very civil and aggressive. Bro was civil aggressive. Chewy is civil aggressive. We've had a number of dogs like that. You can only keep so many dogs that are that way. If you have 50 dogs that are super civil aggressive, you have a major liability on your hands. So you have to be careful about having too many of those. Of course, if you have Fort Knox kennels, you can do that, but I don't want that many anyway because we're trying to keep some good game dogs for the future as we need them. What would you say is okay, that's the same one. What do you use to deworm your dogs? Well, at 2 weeks and 4 weeks, I use pyrantyl pamoate. It's also called Nemex. At 6 weeks, though, I switched to fembendazole, which is the brand names are Safeguard or Panicure. And we do both of those. We use 1 cc for every 4 pounds. Check the concentration, though, because they do come in different concentrations. But the concentrations that we use are going to be we give them at 1 cc per 4 pounds. One of them is supposed to be given at 1 cc per 5 pounds, but there's enough safety margin there. We do 1 cc for 4 pounds. All right, next. Hello, Mr. Robinson. I've been thinking about getting a new dog, and I've narrowed it down to 3 breeds: the American Sentinel, the American Bulldog, and the Dogo Argentino. What sets your dogs apart from them? All right, first of all, the American Bulldog and the Dogo Argentino are both white, so your chances of cancer or blindness or deafness goes up. The chances of being visually recognized by an intruder or an attacker or a threat goes up because you're dealing with a white animal that doesn't have camouflage. Other than that, look, you need to do your research. You should not trust me because you're asking me a question that I could potentially be subjective about instead of objective. And we don't want to have biases. However, my personal opinion, take it with a grain of salt, is I want a dog that's got more determination and commitment. And I think the Dogo Argentino is lacking in that department. They seem to let go a lot when we're seeing it on hog hunting. And the American Bulldog seems to be a pretty tough dog, but they run out of gas. They don't have good heat tolerance or stamina. Those are the problems that I see with those dogs. But if you like those dogs, they're certainly beautiful dogs. They're certainly capable dogs, etc. Next, let me scroll down. Ooh, we got a lot of questions. Athleticism, determination, and health. These boys are rough riders. Okay, that's cool. I second that, Oak. My boy is the best family companion, but he will not accept disrespect from humans or animals. Very loving with the fam, but very serious with anything that's not supposed to be there. Good. Cody Wolf, thanks again for the $2 donation. Logan and Venom are the parents. My boy is 70 pounds at 12 months. How much bigger should he get? All right, Venom is she's got some record behind her. She's coming. Let's see. Venom is out of Scratch and Widow. Widow is a daughter of Wrecker, and both Wrecker and Widow were big dogs. Logan was not a big dog, but we have seen him throw some big dogs, and it was out of that breeding. With Logan being out of, let's see, Logan was out of Scratch and Jazz, I believe, going off memory. And Scratch has not always produced big dogs. Jazz has produced some good-sized dogs. Correct me if I'm wrong. Remind me there. I should know that. I should know that by the back of my hand. I'm pretty confident that's correct. Your variation in size is going to come from the Scratch side more so than the Widow side. And the Widow side being Venom. That's double bred on Scratch. Scratch and Jazz over Scratch and Widow. So you're going to get some variation there. All right, next, how was the wind on? If I had to guess how big you'd be, I'd say probably 80 pounds. You'll probably finish around 75 to 80 pounds. Next, how was the wind on the Jackknife Pumpkin and Frankie Bump? They're just babies. So the Jackknife and Pumpkin have great wind, and Frankie Bump had great wind. But when you said on, I'm assuming how was the wind on? Oh, I thought you were referring to a breeding, because we bred Pumpkin to Boomer, and we bred Jackknife a number of times, and we bred Frankie Bump a number of times. But how is the wind on those 3 dogs? It's great. No problem at all with the wind on them. They all have good air. Next, and they all have good heat tolerance too. Which is your breedings is most likely to produce a male that weighs between 80 pounds, and the screen jumps. I'm reading something in the screen jumps. 80 pounds to 90 pounds at most. Which of your breedings would most likely to produce a male that weighs between 80 and 90 pounds at most? This would be the ideal weight for me. Well, obviously, you're talking about American Sentinel at that size. If that's the most you want, check out our breeding with Slam and Banshee. Those dogs will be max that size and could be less. A male could be less than that. As far as most of our males are going to be around 90 pounds. Chris, this is a question that's, I got to look at the different breedings. I'm not trying to stall on you, but we got a lot of breedings going on. So reach out to me privately and I'll make some recommendations there. But Slam and Banshee should be one to look at. You're going to have a high pit, 90% pit bull influence in that pedigree. I would not expect it as big a dog. Would you be able to make a video about the crossing of the pit bull and the Patterdale? Well, I have no experience with that breeding except for in theory. So I wouldn't be able to make an educated video on that. And one of the things that I can say about myself is I don't like to talk out of a position of inexperience. So if you hear me talk about something, odds are I have some experience on it. How much it's going to vary, but this is something I have zero experience on. So you're better off talking to somebody that actually does that. Reach out to people that are experts that can do or explain what you cannot do or explain. And I've seen a number of people talk about genetics and they have no idea about genetics. And when somebody that is knowledgeable on the topic comes around and here's what they say, it's laughable. And I'm not going to be that guy. So I don't want to talk about the pit bull and Patterdale cross because it would be speculation. Somebody has asked, have I worked the Canis Panther before? No, I've not. I've seen a number of videos on them, and they're not the dog for me, but if they work for someone else, that's cool. Someone that wants to create your own dog, what do you think would be a hippie breed? American Pit Bull Terrier dog. Too many different combinations. I would not try to create something that's a fad. I would try to create something that has a purpose and a clear objective that actually meets you. Don't breed for society. I don't breed my dogs for the public. I breed my dogs for me. I have goals for me. And when I produce the dogs for me, I don't need the whole litter. So we sell the dogs that we don't need to the people that also like the same things that I like because I breed the dogs for me. So don't breed something for the public. You're going to end up spending a bunch of money and you're not going to be dedicated because you're going to be bouncing trying to chase what does the public want. Breed what you want if you're going to breed, and only do that if you're going to be responsible and accept liability for all those animals to care for them until you can find good homes for them. And that's expensive. Man, that Slam Banshee litter is a litter that I'm stoked about. I'm really excited and interested in that breeding. But because it's got so much pit bull, a lot of people don't seem to be interested in that. The hog hunters want them like crazy because they're going to be bigger than game bred dogs and they're going to have the same kind of attitude as a game bred dog, more powerful than a game bred dog. So the hog hunters want them. But the hog hunters want Grand Champion Tornado for $300. I'm not selling them dogs for $300. These are some really nice dogs that are going to perform very well. And so what am I doing? I'm keeping those dogs until I get appropriate homes for them. That's just the way it's going to be. So don't try to chase a fad because you're going to end up with a yard full of dogs or giving dogs away that you can't get rid of. You need to find what it is that you like and then develop a reputation on what it is you like. Breed for that reputation, breed what you like, and then let other people that have common goals find you. Okay, next. Is brindle or reverse Sentinel a bad genomic trait? There's nothing wrong with brindle. Brindle's a perfectly fine trait. There's no detrimental alleles that come with brindle. Next, you mentioned about the Neo having bad hips. Which hip side have you seen the most trouble with on the Neo? I've heard about problems with the Cane Corso back driver hip side. I can't answer that question because I never looked. We don't have really problems with our hips for the most part when only 2% of our population has had hip problems and they were related to the hip. I just pretty much went a different direction because we have so many good dogs that I'm not going to chase trying to figure out a problem that's not a problem for us. We can just have other things to go to. If you're trying to breed Cane Corsos or Neapolitans or dogs that do have those problems, then yeah, you need to figure that out. However, is it going to be one side versus the other? I don't know. I would make sure the dog has plenty of vitamin D, plenty of phosphorus, plenty of sunlight, and make sure it's got a balanced nutrition and that the exercise is age appropriate. I don't know if we're going to be cut off in 12 minutes because I did see something on StreamYard that said something about a 2-hour max. I don't know if that's for live stream or just for recorded things. So we may have to end this pretty soon. Next. Mr. Robinson, just glad to be here and listen to the game that you're dropping. I've been supporting it for a while now. Love it. Keep it going. Be buying a pup from you soon. We'll be glad to help you if we can, but only want to do that if we're the right person for you. Which breeding do you have? I just figured something out. We can see your questions. I didn't know that. Leslie Jackson says, which breeding do you have that will produce dogs over 100 pounds? I like the biggest that I can for home protection. Check out a friend of mine, David Ishii at Midgard Mastiffs. He produces dogs that are larger than ours. Our dogs are generally speaking are going to be, not always, but generally speaking, more athletic and more determined. But he has some really big dogs. If size is super important with you, Midgard Mastiffs is a place to check out. He's a great guy. He stands behind his stuff, and he'll do his best to take care of you. Those are going to be basically healthy Mastiffs, though. They're not going to be the super high intense working caliber dog. Some of them are, but the average is a healthy Mastiff that's capable of doing reasonable work. I produce a performance canine, okay, for hog hunting. They can run through the woods at near full gait, and it almost looks like the dogs are guessing where the trees are. They run so fast through the woods, they have no problems with it. All right. So check that out. If you really want a dog from us and you're wanting size, then you need to ask yourself how important size is to you, because I can't guarantee that the dog's going to be over 100 pounds. Our males will go anywhere from 80 to 110 on average. All right. Most of them are going to be around 90. Next, I ran sorrels and Patterdale crosses. They are okay. I did not notice any more grit than a standard Patterdale, but they are more dog aggressive, which is not ideal when you're running more than one. Okay, next, Ranger Trinity coming up, possibly. Okay, I have considered Ranger and Trinity. I do like Ranger a lot. I do like Trinity a lot, and that would be a good combination because you have Frankie Bomp and Valkyrie on the Ranger side, and Frankie Bomp is my favorite pit bull of all time. He's awesome. And then his mother, Valkyrie, was a very big, very tough, very determined animal. She was really tough. And then Trinity, you've got coming off a real big female named Patches, which was, in my opinion, Valkyrie was a better dog than Patches, but Patches is still a very tough animal. And then Trinity is coming off Lucky 7. So you got Lucky 7 and Patches. So you got a big game bred pit over a big American Sentinel, bred back to another very high quality pit, Frankie Bomp, bred back to Valkyrie, which is a big American Sentinel. So you got a lot of game bred dog coming in there with the Frankie Bomp and Lucky 7. And I saw no holes at all in Valkyrie. That dog, she may have been an American Sentinel and she may have been big, but she thought she worked like a pit bull. She was a very solid dog. Next, do you think the prosecutor would do good as a catch dog? I don't have any idea what you're talking about. Thanks. You're welcome. Let's see. The public wants a 150-pound golden retriever or Corso that acts like a golden retriever. I don't know anything about that. Good evening, my friend. I appreciate it. Take 2 more. I'll take 2 more, just like the 2 I already have. Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. We appreciate your support. Will Banshee make dogs that excel in protection work? Banshee's a solid dog. I think she'll do anything that I want her to do. Slam is a dog that was, if you know about Slam, he was raised by a friend of mine, Pat Patrick, and he was pretty much kept in a kennel for the first few years and told to always be nice, told to be nice, told to be nice. He was a very tough dog for him to keep because he always wanted to work. He was destroying dog houses, destroying kennels, showing a lot of animal aggression, but he was always told to be nice. So since his mother, Patches, was a very difficult dog to breed, I reached out to Mr. Patrick and said, hey, you told me about the pros and cons of Slam. He called him Blockbuster because he was always busting everything. And a gorgeous dog, tremendous athleticism and a lot of strength and good drive. He just doesn't have man aggression because he was told to be nice. Patrick does not want a man aggressive dog because Patrick's 81 years old or 80 years old. He's going to be 80. He's either going to be 80 or he's going to be 81. In May, I believe, but he didn't want a man aggressive dog at his age. So we reached out to him and said, hey, We would like to have Slam back because we've bred Patches a number of times. We have not been able to get any more litters off of her, and I would like to have a great son off of her. A Slam is obviously a very formidable animal. We got him back, and I've thought about trying to get him to do protection work, but because he's so animal aggressive, I think you'd be better off using him for a hog catch because we do both. So, and that old idea of putting a square peg in a round hole, yeah, we could try to reshape him, but why? When he would just excel at hog catch. And Banshee is a dog. I think I can do anything with her. She shows a lot of good traits. She does have animal aggression, but she's so malleable, so easy to train. I'm sure we can get her to do protection work. These pups, just imprint them on some man work, and I think you'll be fine. Start off with some rag work, start off with some suspicion work at night, start off with somebody doing some ding dong ditch, where somebody comes up to the house, knocks on the door, rings the doorbell, whatever. Dog keys off on that because they know somebody's at the door. You open the door and the person kind of runs away, and you're going to trigger some suspicion that way. And keep enhancing that and developing that, and you should be able to tap those drives and redirect them where you need them. Okay. Next, the Patterdale. The Patterdale already has PID already in some of the lines. Yeah, of course, they share common ancestry. If you go back far enough, the breeders have talked about, and even then, like he said, I'm sure some people are crossbreeding them, have talked before, and they said the same problems with some of the game dog people have, which is dog aggressive and dams eating pups. I would be very interested in the Ranger Trinity. If you're serious, reach out to us and talk to us because we're probably going to end up doing that. Next, I was asking, do you think I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. Prusy Land Mary, I don't know that one. Thank you for the information. How big is your dog's head? I've never measured a dog's head. That's not an important trait to me. If you need a dog to catch a hog, the hog doesn't pull out a tape measure and measure the dog's head. If you need a dog to stop a criminal, the criminal doesn't pull out a tape measure and measure the dog's head. You need a dog that's intense and committed. That's what's going to matter. The bite and the commitment and the determination and athleticism, the heat tolerance, the endurance, the ability to breed. These are the things that matter. Can the dog recover and go home and do the same thing again tomorrow? All right. What is your favorite Sentinel and your favorite American Pit Bull Terrier currently on your yard? Well, I was talking to Madison and also Lavi. Lavi has catch guard kennels, and Madison, of course, is bulletproof kennels. And I spoke to another friend of mine who has a YouTube channel, Bully Max, and I'm kind of like a kid in a candy store right now with my American Pit Bull Terriers because every single pit bull that I have on my yard is a dog that I would pay $4 grand for. I mean, I love them all. I have worked really hard for a number of years to get our pit bulls where I want them to be, and right now they are exactly where I want them to be. I'm just like a kid in a candy store. Get giddy, and if I walk through the yard, I have to be careful. When I walk through my yard and look at my pit bulls, I just start smiling. Like, these dogs are all awesome. I don't want to sound like an egotistical fool, but I'm very pleased with my pit bulls. The Sentinels are going to be a little less consistent because they're a crossbred dog, and that might sound like I'm shooting myself in the foot, but anybody that's honest will know that it takes decades to produce a refined, consistent product. And so while we certainly have made leaps and bounds and major strides in the American Sentinel, and I do think a good American Sentinel is better all around than a pit bull, because a good example is going to bring everything to the table that a pit bull brings. Plus, it's going to be protective, and it's going to be stronger and more durable. So, yes, the perfect Sentinel is better than the pit bull, but you're going to have more culling when you're dealing with the Sentinel. So let's say the right now my pit bulls are producing at a higher percentage. My favorite dogs are going to be the Sentinels. My favorite Sentinel is going to be Scratch or Ladysmith, Chewy. Those are some of my favorite. Bumper. Those are some of my favorites. Bumper, I'd like a little bit more muscle mass than he has, but that's the phenotype. That's not a performance issue. So I'm also, Slam phenotype is perfect. I love Slam's phenotype. Ranger, I love his phenotype. but Ranger and Slam are more people friendly. Ranger was a sole survivor in a litter, so he did not learn how to interact with other dogs, and he was hand fed because his mother was laying on the puppies and killing them. So he had to literally bottle feed him as a baby. So maybe that's why he's so imprinted on people. And Slam's imprinted because Pat Patrick didn't want any man aggression. And then my favorite pit bull in the yard, I don't have a favorite pit bull. I love them all. It's taken me 25 years to get the pit bulls I have, and a lot of connections and a lot of culling. But because the pit bull is more consistent, I was able to get to a final 100% approval all across the board on the pit bulls I have, because there's so many pit bulls out there that you can cull and cull and cull and end up with a gene pool that's exactly what you want. And it's taken me 25 years to get there, but I am there. All right, next. Some of you need to read back on your own comments, man. All right. Hey, we're all human, but I get it. A great video. Thank you. I appreciate that. And any mistakes to avoid in protection training? Yeah, make sure you always have good equipment. Make sure you understand the perimeter, defined perimeter on what the dog can and cannot reach. Make sure you and your decoy or your agitator or helper, whatever you're going to call them. An agitator does protection work. Helpers and decoys made to be doing sport work. They may be doing protection work. It kind of depends on the venue and the person that you're dealing with. But make sure you understand perimeter and that you clearly defined what you're going to do before you do it. One of the worst things you can do is have a handler that is not in good communication with the decoy, and then you're off the same you're not communicating effectively, and then as a result of that, maybe the handler wants a lot of times the handlers are new, and because the handlers are new, they like to give their dog extra slack when maybe it's not necessary, because sometimes an agitator or a decoy wants that dog to miss, but the handler doesn't know the decoy wants the dog to miss, because the decoy might be trying to build drive, and in an attempt to build drive, they're going to use denial of reward, and that's going to build a greater commitment from the dog, but the handler doesn't know that, and since the handler doesn't know that, they give the dog extra room, and so the dog can get the reward, and the dog wasn't really supposed to. So then what happens is you lose drive, or you have an accident and a person is bit when they should not be bit, and then you have to holler and get the dog off, and it messes up the session, because now the dog's told no, 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 because you got the decoy getting bit. So use good equipment and use good communication and be patient. It's much better to go slow than it is fast. Think about it like driving a car. You don't want your teenager who just got their permit to drive 100 miles an hour down the freeway. Okay, so they have to first learn how to drive slow on a country road, then they drive faster on a country road, then they drive slower in the city, then they drive faster in the city, then they drive slower on the highway in a metropolitan area, then they drive faster on the highway in a metropolitan area. It's all progressive. So just take your time and go slow, because if you go full speed on a highway in a metropolitan area the first time out, you're going to have a wreck and destroy everything. So just be patient. There are some dogs that can take that, but not all of them. So I do like to know what the dog's genetic predisposition is to stuff, but don't force it. Just take your time. Where I live, watchdog training can be expensive. Would you say one of your dogs is great for instinctively protecting the family and the home? Some of them are. Some of them need some work. But the problem with this idea is not so much the dog. A lot of them actually can be very protective instinctively. But you have to, one, tell me what you want, and two, or tell your breeder what you want, and two, make sure you're dealing with an honest breeder, and three, make sure you're dealing with yourself. Go back and watch the earlier parts of the video if you missed that. And then even if you have a good candidate, how do you know it's a good candidate? A lot of dogs that huff and puff and bluff behind a fence, or huff and puff and bluff behind a window, or huff and puff and bluff when they're in a car, or huff and puff and bluff when they're on a leash. But what do they do at that last second when the bite is actually permitted? Will they be committed to that? And the only way to know that for a fact, even though you can get a really good idea, you need to see that dog engage and develop the grip. Because, there's some people out there that say, well, you don't have to teach a fish to swim. You're right. You don't have to teach a fish to swim, and you don't have to teach a dog to bite. But you do need to teach the dog to be comfortable on the bite. Because biting is either prey or defense. And they're not always killing a rabbit. They're not always killing a hog, and they're not always fighting a bear. So just because they can eat and bite kibble in a bowl doesn't going to mean they're going to be comfortable on combat. All right. Oaktown, if you're in Oaktown, California, reach out. I can help you. There you go. So whoever asked that, Oaktown, I love 3, reach out to Devin Gamble. So let me show you this. Oaktown, I love 3, reach out to Devin Gamble. You can find Urban Defense Bandogs on Facebook. Okay. So with that said, we have been on here for over 2 hours. So I need to go ahead and exit. But before I do, I want to say thank you for watching this video. I'm going to do something else here just for a sec. And we're going to close with, if I can find it, or we're going to close with a video that my friend Eric Lawton at Battlebred Canine has made for us. But thank you very much for stopping by. Like and subscribe if you're willing to like and subscribe. And we look forward to doing another one here in the near future. $25.